Assalamualaikum and hi, we are from the Foodies. Today we want to present about sales processing and cash receipt of MarryBrown Sendian Berhad. The Foodies member consists of me, Adriana, Cheng Yong, Syafiqah, Nabila and Danish. We do an interview session with manager of MarryBrown Kucha Pedak Kedah, Madam Afifah, to know about their company and also the transaction of sales processing and cash receipt cycle. So this is some picture that have been captured during the interview. This company use two systems in their sales processing, which is Kaskapi and Z-Reading. Kaskapi system is used by the cashier to key in the customer order, meanwhile Z-Reading system is used by the manager to track the beginning and closing invoice numbers, the beginning and ending amount sold and sales quantity and the amount of sales.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Nur Nabila binti Muhammad Hafiz. Matric number 280745 will be presenting the table of entities and activities. The transaction of the sales processing starts off with the customer placing an order, and then the cashier will record the customer order data. Next, the computer will confirm the order and then process the payment. After the customer make the payment to the cashier, the computer will add the customer order into the Kaskapi system and then generate the order receipt and then print out the receipt to give it to the customer. Next, the cashier will pass the order to the kitchen and the kitchen will prepare the order. After that, the completed customer order will be sent to the customer. The computer will update the sold item in the system and file it. Next, the computer will print out the system report and the cashier will submit the report to the manager. The manager will view the report and compare the quantity sold with the physical count. After that, the manager will update the inventory file and file the inventory in the management control book. Finally, the manager will prepare the report and send it to the management.
The transaction of cash receipt will start with the customer make a cash payment to the cashier. Then the computer will record the payment into system, prepare and print out the receipt and file the payment into customer payment file. Next, the manager will pick up the payment and compare it with the receipt. Lastly, the manager will make a deposit and deposit it to the bank. Next is about context diagram. For sales order processing, the customer will send the order details and the order acknowledgement details will be sent back to the customer. The customer order details will be sent to the kitchen and then the report detail will be sent to the manager. For cash receipt, the customer will send the payment details and it will be deposited to the bank. That's all from me, so I will pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Hi, I will continue the presentation. So my name is Nur Syafiqah binti Fazi, matrix number 275806. I will explain about the physical and logical data flow diagram by MarryBrown Sendian Berhad. First is the sales processing physical DFT. So there are three internal and external entities, which are customer, kitchen, and management for the external. Meanwhile, for the internal are cashier, computer, and sales manager. So the first role is the customer will give order to the cashier, then the food order will be transferred to the kitchen, then the customer will get a receipt from cashier. The cashier will update the data and sales report to computer and sales manager. Next, the computer will update the sales and inventory data store. Lastly, the sales manager will update sales and inventory files and prepare a management report to the management. For the cash receipt physical DFD, there are three internal and two external entities, which are for the internal, cashier, computer, and sales manager, and for the external, customer and bank. So first, customer will make payment cash to the cashier, then the cashier will scan the payment data to the computer to update sales data and inventory data store. The cashier will also prepare the sales order and give it to the sales manager. The sales manager will update the sales report on the computer, and lastly, the slip and the cash payment will be deposited into the bank. Next, I will proceed with the logical data flow diagram. For the first logical DFD is the sales processing logical DFD. So firstly is the customer will order for food, then the order will be processed and the cashier will print out the order receipt to give to the customer. Then the food order will be passed to the kitchen. In the next step, The sold item will be updated in sold item file and transferred to the database of sold item. After that, the sales summary will be compared with the quantity sold with the physical count, and the inventory data will be updated to the inventory file and transferred to the inventory database. Lastly is generate and prepare a management report based on the daily sold items and inventory amount details and submit to the manager. Last but not least is the cash receipt of logical DFD. So the customer will make a cash payment to the cashier who will receive the payment, and the sales record will be updated into the computer to record the sales into the sales and inventory data. Then the manager will pick up the receipt and payment summary from the cashier and computer. It is to compare the cash payment with the physical count and validate the receipt to prepare the deposit. Lastly, the cash sales will be deposited into the bank. That's all from me. I will pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Now, I will explain about the flowchart. For sales order processing, it will start with the customer placing order. Then the cashier will record the order and the computer will file the customer order. Then the computer will confirm the order and process the payment. The processed payment will be sent to the customer, and when the customer make a payment, the cashier will receive the payment and the computer will generate the receipt. So the receipt will be sent back to the customer. The customer order will be sent to the kitchen to prepare the customer order. When it is complete, it will be sent to the customer. After that, the computer will update sold item and it will be filed into the sold item files. Next, the computer will print out the report of the sold item and will be sent to the manager. The manager will receive the report and compare the quantity sold with the physical count and update the inventory files. Finally, the manager will prepare the manager report and lastly, send it to the management. For the cash receipt processing, it starts off with the customer make a cash payment to the cashier and the cashier record the payment into the computer. So, the computer will record the payment into the system and file it into the customer payment file. Next, the manager will pick up the customer payment and compare the receipt with physical count. Finally, the manager will prepare a deposit and then deposit it to the bank.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Danish Irfan bin Mana Sharuddin and my metric number is 280921. I will be presenting about strength of internal control procedures. There are three strengths of MarryBrown's theorem. I will be explaining the first strength, which is accounting records. Accounting records. Everything is mechanized and done on a computer. Possibility of disproved transaction, overcharging and overpayment will less. As an example, MarryBrown's theorem is computerizing almost single aspect of ledgers to a computer system rather than completing it by manually that almost always result in human faults. The second strength is segregation of duties. Segregation of duties. It will speed things up because each department has its own duties and obligations, which will allow them to complete each other's tasks in a timely manner, increasing the overall performance of the company. This will also assist in the detection of fraud in entries. For example, MarryBrown's theorem has divided some duties by assigning tasks to each department, such as the sales department and the cash receipt department. The last strength of MarryBrown's theorem is independent verification. Independent verification. This is to identify errors and misrepresentations. As an example, some verification isn't to be handled by a higher leadership management, but it can also be handled by a lower division management, which MarryBrown's theorem has assigned to the cashier, who is responsible for verifying the customer order. Next, I will be presenting the topic about the possible weakness of MarryBrown's theorem. There are three possible weaknesses that can be faced by MarryBrown's theorem. The first possible weakness is lack of segregation of duties. The duties of receiving payment and recording customer order data are not segregated at MarryBrown's theorem. The same individual, which is the cashier, is in charge of both payment and customer order data entry. The second is lack of independent verification. MarryBrown and Sundara Berhad use two-chapi system. The system requires cashier to tell the kitchen itself about the order. So, it maybe will risk in terms of sending wrong orders because there may be something wrong with informing the order or the order is insufficient. The last weakness of MarryBrown Sundara Berhad is lack of independent verification. It is the same weakness but in a different explanation. So, the third weakness is the manager failed to truly inspect the sales order. For example, a cashier may retrieve the Z reading report from the computer and submit it to the manager in order to compare the quantity sold to the physical counts, although this method is exposed to human mistake. This is because the Z reading report may contain a quantity that differs from the physical amount.
Good day, Madam. My name is Chua Chen Yong with matrix number 271130. Now I'll present the risk exposure and appropriate internal control procedure for sales processing and cash receipt in this company. Refer to the first weakness, which is lack of segregation of duty. One of the physical assets at risk in the revenue cycle is cash. Then the company will suffer risk of misappropriation of asset and customer order records. This is because the cashier can steal or lose the cash and adjust the customer order records to conceal the event. There is a need to separate asset custody from record keeping. Hence, they need to perform segregation of duty between cashier and bookkeepers. Cashier should in charge of payment while bookkeeper should in charge of customer order data entry to avoid fraud. Based on the weakness of lack of independent verification, there is a risk of serving wrong item or inaccurate quantities to customer. This is because kitchen will receive wrong verbal orders from cashier and cook the food. These wrong verbal orders will then send to customer without reconcile it with customer orders. The appropriate internal control procedure is independent for verification. The cashier should verify that the foods are correct in types and quantity before sent to customer by reconciling it with customer orders. According to the last weakness, which is lack of independent verification, there is a risk of inaccurate record keeping because of fail to thoroughly inspect the sales order. Based on the Z reading report, there are some days where the quantity sold was different from the physical amount. For instance, MarryBrown Maidin Bukit Bertajam stated the Z reading report has 11 hoggy buns. However, the physical amount only has 10 hoggy buns. Thus, it will happen inaccurate inventory record keeping. The appropriate internal control procedure is independent for verification. The manager of MarryBrown Sundara Berhad should make sure the inspection of sales order with the stated physical amount is right before updating the inventory records. This process must be performed in order to detect error quickly and correct it immediately. Alright, that's all from the Foodies. Thank you for watching.